Good afternoon. It is July 16th, Wednesday, year 2019, and this is the next episode allotment of the Torture Rehabilitation Project. And I'll begin, just for people hopping on for the first time, I have an infestation of youths under my apartment in bunkers underground that are shooting electrochemical weapons at me, treating me like a real-life video game, hitting me in all my most vulnerable places, and having a tough time getting them out. Tried many things, and now I'm trying this. And I'm blessed with some other youths have decided to flip and be my allies and advocates. And so they're after these guys all the time to wrap it up and get lost and go have a healthy life somewhere, not under my house. And my favorite statement recently is, "You're not in a relationship with her." And so I'm going to go into just scratching the surface at the enormously complex issue of relationships. And hopefully this will help. I can't fault my advocates from what I'm hearing today, that they're just being so wonderful, just right on top of these guys, haranguing them, making all sorts of great points that I'll never be a prostitute for teenagers ever. And they tried poking and prodding at me this morning and molesting me, and I just pretended like they don't exist as best I can. The maternal trick is don't respond to bad behavior of the toddler. So anyway, just looking over relationships and how kids develop. I know from my own experience as a child that as a little girl, third grade on up, I would have these terrible crushes on boys, and it was just like Blue Lagoon romantic imaginings, and it just couldn't stop thinking about whoever the current crush was. And most of the time, he was not interested at all in girls yet, and barely knew I existed. And then girls get that before boys do. I think boys can have crushes. I think girls start when they're younger, and they're usually, for the most part, unfulfilled. And then you get into adolescence, and then all these confusion, feelings of sexuality and what to do with it, and I think with boys, it's the desire to just not embody sexuality as something that's a heart-mind thing, that it's I think seen more as something that there's a competitive thing about it, and if not allowed to evolve in healthy ways, and in this society, it really seems to be happening, that it becomes something of a sport, and in this case, sort of a sex porn violent video game, and that causes all sorts of terrible problems in the mind of somebody who is absorbed in this. And there's different types of personalities, I believe, and that's a whole other subject, because there's different schools of thought. It's like, what is a narcissist? Do you label somebody that, or a sociopath? Is that fair to them? Does that really encompass the whole personality of obsessive compulsive disorder, etc.? And so getting back to the nature of relationships, what one hopes as a child progresses through these teenage years, where it's just natural to be very self-centered and self-absorbed, and part of the maturing process is to learn that you aren't the center of everything, and you're not entitled to that you're part of a greater whole. And that's the first step of understanding what a healthy relationship is. And yesterday I talked about how in my value system, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what your sexual persuasion is, heterosexual, homosexual, transgender. The important thing is the intent to work on your own stuff, your own problems, your own selfishness, your own need to control. And as you develop yourself into a better person, you're more able to have a healthy relationship. And one of the most difficult parts of a relationship is the power dynamic. And different personality types can function in different types of relationships well. If it's not a dysfunctional relationship, if there's one person who's sort of passive and doesn't like to be in charge, in a relationship with somebody who's more on the side of being authoritarian and controlling. The issue is if there is some balance struck, that each person is allowed their personhood and who they are, and then the different personalities can proceed in the relationship in ways that is true to their nature. Ideally, though, I think it's important to have some semblance of balance, and even more crucial in relationship, there has to be give and take. There has to be interaction, and or else it's not a relationship. And that's the problem with this dynamic with these kids torturing me. They have these wall-penetrating visual devices. They haven't developed their personhood yet, and they're fighting with all these intense sexual urgings, and who knows what kind of programming they got from family or community that makes them feel like they're entitled to control and manipulate another human being who can't even see them and doesn't know who they are. And so if they can see me and I can't see them, it's pretty clear how if they keep obsessively at me for hours of the day and night, trying to force me to do this or that thing, that they can develop this whole fantasy life around that and project their egos and their problems onto the target. And that's the very antithesis of a relationship. There can be no growth there, no learning the fundamental humanist parts of being a person, which has a lot to do with learning and innovating and expanding in your own personal journey, and then hopefully finding people that you can journey with, whether it be a friend or a lover, or hopefully family. That's a whole other topic I won't go into today either. So I think the important thing, I think that there are probably there's the boys that are very prone to rage and overly emotional and constantly yelling and swearing and angry because they can't control me the way they like. And then there's these others that are very cold and detached. And when they're messing with me, it's like they're dissecting a frog on a table. And their tone of conversation is very detached. They see sexuality as something completely separate from their emotions. And I suspect a few of those ones might be gay. And then it begs the question, why would they feel it worth their time, even if they're paid, to do this to a woman old enough to be their mother, there's clearly some repressed rage issues in my mind for that to be taking place. But like I said, it doesn't matter what the sexual persuasion is. If you're participating as a youth in this kind of extremely removed from healthy interaction with the other individual, treating them like a computer program, a video game, and there is no interaction, that's really, really destructive to their development as a human being, and it's going to cause a lot of long-term problems in the times to come. So I think I'll wrap it up for today on that note, and just giving them something to contemplate, that you didn't come into this world being able to control everything and everyone around you. That's a lesson that you must learn if you're going to have any hope of a healthy, happy life in the future, and if you ever hope to grow beyond this arrested development state that you're in right now, doing what you're doing. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Be safe.